Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast. This is episode 45. I've been reliably informed. This is me introducing it twice in 2 weeks, actually. That's considering I missed the week before as well. I think that's penance, isn't it? But there you go. Is that what it's called? Right. So anyway, I'm here with the usual suspects. I have got, so basically, I'm going to go through this because we've got it's like a cast of Guess Who characters at the minute, right? I'm the one with the hair and not a beard. I just haven't had a shave for a while. Then we've got Mr. Paul Bassett. Say hello, Paul. How are we doing?
Hello. I'm moving my glasses up and down.
Yeah. So Paul's the one with a little bit of hair because he's basically got the same on his head as I have on my chin. He couldn't be bothered to shave his head, but he's got glasses.
You're very derogatory.
Then we've got. I'm just describing your appearance. This is okay. We're not allowed, obviously in this day and age. We're not allowed to talk about people's appearance.
You could say I have a lovely complection and that I have a nice smile.
Whoever said that?
You say he hasn't shaved his head.
Whoever said that in Guess Who? No, but we've got the evolution of hair loss going on, right?
Evolution of hair loss.
That was a popular James. Then we've got James, who's got no hair and no glasses, but he's got an impressive beard. And then we've got, hiya James, by the way, say hello.
Hello.
Hey, there we go. How's it going? You all right?
Yeah, very good.
Good, glad to hear it. And then we have, there's my pen. Then we have an extra special guest all the way from Ottawa. It's Ottawa, isn't it? In Canada, but he's actually originally from Reading in the UK. He has no hair and glasses. And that's Mr. Chris Denning. How are you doing, Chris?
Very well, thank you. Very pleased to be on the podcast.
No, it's great to have you on. So a little bit of background about Chris. I know Chris vaguely through Instagram because Chris is on Instagram everywhere doing Indian clubs, Persian meals, kettlebells. What was that thing you had today? The thing over your head doing that?
Oh, the kabadeh, the bow.
Yeah. Lots of all the Persian stuff, all like guards, maces, garters, all of that sort of stuff. He loves it. But the thing about Chris is he's not a trainer, he's not a coach. We were just talking about this beforehand, and he was saying he'd wanted to be on because of all the guests we've had on beforehand, all these high-level coaches. Chris isn't one of those. He's basically our number one fan. I feel a bit like Gary Newman at the minute. Because didn't he marry his number one fan, and now we've got our number one fan on the podcast. So yeah, so
I'd like you to turn up like Gary Newman.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll have Pino Palladino on bass behind me, so that'd be good, wouldn't it? But anyway, So like I say, I vaguely know Chris. He's into lots of stuff. He's got lots of skills, but it wasn't always that way. And we were just talking about that before we started recording. So. Chris, a little bit of background. You're from Reading. You now live in Canada. So what happened? What happened? Off you go.
So we're all of a similar age and grew up around the Reading area. In fact, I actually grew up living in the Middle East in around Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Qatar. My parents were in the oil business, so we moved around a lot. And going to school in the UK, obviously there's a heavy focus on team sports, which I was not very good at, football, rugby, the usual. And I was sort of the typical overweight kid, glasses, spots, the whole triumvirate of unpopular things. And eventually we went on a trip to the Brecon Beacons when I was a kid with the school. And were basically kind of dumped out of a van and sent off on a long walk. In fact, it was about 30 miles over a few days. But it was actually, for me, it was a life-changing experience because I hadn't really known what I was very capable of. But from there, I started to think about trying to get more into being healthy, eating healthy, and actually doing some exercise. So I started running. and after I left university, I took up running. I was working for a company in the lovely Bracknell area, but living in Reading. And I started racing every year, 10K and 5K, and swimming and training with a triathlon club, and really pushing myself very hard. And then an opportunity came up. My wife and I both work for the same company, and we met. We both worked for the same company, and we met. She was working in the office in Bracknell, and an opportunity came up to move to Ottawa, which I jumped on. And I definitely haven't looked back from that, because it's a beautiful place to live. But I think the theme of my training up until, my late 30s has been, and I think this is why your podcast has really resonated with me, is that I've sort of been destroying myself slowly, pushing myself very hard. I ran a lot. And when I say 10K races, I mean, I was running it in like sub 40 minutes. Really pushing myself. And I first picked up a kettlebell, I think when I was 30. I ordered one from a blacksmith I can't even remember who it was now, and I bought one of Pavel's books, and I sort of started working through that just to do some extra training at home. And then when I moved here, I got into Muay Thai really heavily. Again, I mean, it's not something I was like amazing at or anything, but I really enjoyed the challenge of just, again, kind of testing myself, which it seems to have been a theme for many years. And then I ended up doing a certification 6 or 7 years ago, a kettlebell certification. There's a company here called the Gatsu who run kettlebell. They do mace and Indian club certifications. They teach more of a hybrid kind of high tension and sports style mixed, which I thought was really good. And I didn't intend necessarily to coach, but I just wanted to learn more about kettlebells and kettlebell technique. And there was a chap there by the name of Dave Van Derker who had brought a mace and a couple of Indian clubs and was swinging those in the certification. He was a kind of level 2 instructor and was just sort of demonstrating. And immediately I was sort of hooked, and I thought, geez, what are these tools? They look amazing. So I contacted him and ended up spending a number of weeks at his gym on the Quebec side, learning how to swing a mace. Now that style is more of a sports style, and I ended up doing a couple of competitions and also learning some of the Indian club stuff as well. And at the time, I mean, now I look back, I'm a little bit sad that I only use the Indian clubs as kind of a warm-up and mobility drills, when I sort of, like yourself, now appreciate it as a practice all of its own. But I think, moving on since then, it's been more about, and for instance, you guys had an episode on longevity and training, and I've heard a few podcasts recently on the same theme, which now I'm in my 40s is something that has really been high on my mind, is how do I continue to move well, into old age, be able to squat, stand up off the ground, things like that, reach overhead, which I know may sound silly at my age, but I mean, you see, even my own grandmother had fallen when she was in her 80s, and I think she was never the same since then. So really, that's why I think a lot of the episodes you've had have really resonated with me in terms of just moving better, looking after, and also just trying to take some responsibility for your own health.
I was just going to say, if any of the listeners are on Instagram, and I know many of them are, that's kind of where I first came across Chris as well. And he's on there as at Master Denning. And he's always training outside on his driveway. And it looks absolutely fantastic because he's got like either, like you say, maces or Indian clubs or kettlebells or body weight stuff just on the driveway. I mean, is that where I have also seen you in a gym doing stuff as well? But is the bulk of your training done at home or just outside, Chris?
It is, yeah. A lot of that was driven by COVID. I joined when my kids were born. My daughter, who's now 9, a friend of mine and I used to train at the same Muay Thai gym, and when we both had kids at the same age, and obviously with young kids, training at 5 o'clock in the evening is just not possible because of dinner and all the other responsibilities. So we ended up joining a CrossFit gym where we could go in at, say, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. And I've been a member of that gym ever since. I mean, I'm still a member, and it's a CrossFit gym, but it's a lot of strongman training as well. But I think that, again, it's the same theme that I've had of intense running, Muay Thai, CrossFit, a lot of really challenging myself and pushing myself probably more than I should. I mean, I think CrossFit, there's a few benefits I think that CrossFit has brought to the world, but certainly one of them is not the competitive aspect for regular folks who, in terms of the way they run things, with the high intensity training every single day and the competitive aspect of it, especially with, Olympic weightlifting and whatnot. I mean, obviously there are good and bad coaches everywhere, and the gym I'm part of, CrossFit Bytown, which is here, has been, kind of a home away from home for me as well. But obviously with the gyms closed here, thankfully I've managed to acquire enough equipment, probably too much equipment, my wife would say, at home, because I've got kettlebells, sandbags, the maces, the whole, everything. And I just ended up training on my driveway because it was easier, and I just like being outside in the fresh air, and I don't have a lot of space here either inside, especially with my kids home all the time. And it's just sort of become what it's just been easier that way.
I'm totally with you on that, because there's a place in Bradford-on-Avon, just up the road from me, a guy called Pete. I can't remember his surname. What's his surname? Anyway, he makes Indian clubs and Persian meals and everything, and he sends them all around the world. He's basically the main guy for that thing around the world at the minute, which is quite amazing. So he only lives up the road from me, so I've been to see him a few times, and I always come back with something else. And I live in a 2-bed flat. I've got marks on the wall from where I've hit them with clubs and stuff, but my missus is quite okay with that. But,
As long as you don't hit her with it, I'm sure she's.
Well, as long as I don't hit her with it. But when the last 2 pairs of meals turned up, she was like, really, like really, what you're doing? And I was like, okay, but at least it's not like I've bought them all and they just sit there doing nothing. I use them.
They look nice, don't
they? They look lovely, and I actually use them. So there you go. So
and it's probably worth telling people actually what they are, because it just sounds like some food.
Chunks of wood.
Yeah,
basically.
Well, they originate in, I'd say, the Indian subcontinent and Persia. The wrestlers and combat sports folks have used heavy wooden clubs to train for shoulder strength for hundreds, if not thousands, of years. And then Indian clubs themselves were actually designed by the British when they were occupying India. They'd seen people training with these very heavy clubs and designed much smaller, they're about the length of your arm, much smaller clubs for general health and fitness at the time, in sort of leading into Victorian times, which actually, funnily enough, I sort of wonder if there seems to be a sort of resurgence in traditional calisthenics, which I wonder if, creating that kind of supple strength. I mean, obviously you're not lifting heavy weights or anything, but, you almost wonder if there's something to it. But yeah, traditionally in Persia and India, they've used heavy wooden clubs to train, and also the what's called a gada, which is basically a mace, which is traditionally made with a concrete head and a bamboo pole, and the whole purpose of that is to simulate an arm throw or throwing someone over your shoulder in wrestling. So it develops strength for that.
Probably why I'm so good at grabbing my toddler when he's having a tantrum and throwing him over my shoulder.
Well, one thing that I was just going to say as well, with Chris, well, I think the first time we had a proper kind of back and forth, if you like, on social media was when I'd probably bit off a bit more than I could chew, and I'd got a 20 kilo hammer from Raw Form, from Sean at Raw Form, this big Punisher Warhammer thing. I had not a clue how to swing it, and I was swinging it and just doing my best. And Chris, absolutely fantastic. You know, I think it was at your gym that you talk about. You'd gone and you'd filmed a few things for me, and you sent it to me and said, "Look, I've noticed this. You know, try this. Try and lean more like this. Transfer your weight more." And you sent me about 3 or 4 videos, I think, and that really helped. So yeah, no, I mean, like you say, you're not a coach of stuff, or you know you do a real job, and this is more a passion for you and a pastime. But you've got a huge amount of knowledge there that certainly really helped me turn a corner with that, which is fantastic. So thank you for that.
So has your journey been marked? I mean, how do you? I suppose, how would you see yourself really when it comes to your own journey? Has it been something that you struggle with? Do you struggle to fit this in? Do you struggle with anything, or do you find it quite easy because you have a real passion for the subject?
I think previously I found it fairly easy to fit it in, just because I found, you know, my work has been fairly stressful, you know, working in the software business, and you know, both my wife and I have pretty stressful jobs. But for me, it's always been an outlet and a way to kind of just switch off for a while.
Because most people will say, I haven't got time, won't they? They'll say, because if you're a busy person, so you're working in software, I work with quite a few people in a similar industry, and and often meetings start, I mean, you're probably doing Zoom meetings, or, you know, what are they called? Teams, Microsoft Teams or whatever. And sometimes those things can start at 8 a.m. and they can keep going till 6 p.m.
Yeah.
Like, say you've got the kids to look after. So, I mean, are your colleagues experiencing this kind of, I don't have any time? But
people I know there's a lot of people I know who say that. I mean, my view is that for me, I know that I'm a better employee, a better father, a better family, you know, husband. And, you know, I find if I get some training in, it just makes me a better person in terms of, you know, mentally and physically. And for me, I like to look after my own health, and I prioritize it over a lot of other things. Even if that means, you know, I have to get up early, it sets me up for the day, or I'll train in the evening. And even days when, you know, meetings or the kids will take up to, you know, a lot more time and I don't have time to train, then even if I get 15 minutes of club swinging, you know, to me, just some kind of movement. I mean, I would say what's helped is a lot, you know, I've added in, I think a lot of the club swinging and some of this physical culture that I'm interested in with the mace, the Persian meal, the Indian clubs. I think it's added, what appealed to me the most is it's something that I've been looking for unknowingly, I think, for many years, because it added a lot of yin to balance the yang of what I've been doing before, where I've effectively been kind of destroying my body.
What do you mean destroying your body?
Well, just training extremely hard and not taking rest days, not doing any mobility work. I mean, that's one of the things I do think about CrossFit, is that with people like Kelly Starrett and then Jill Miller, who runs the Yoga Tune-Up, those things were kind of life-changing for me in terms of looking at, you know, trying to recover properly from the training. But I had treated it a bit like a Band-Aid approach versus, you know, last year I sat down with myself and sort of said, you know, I keep picking up injuries and I'm, you know, this is not working. So I actually spent a lot of time just trying to move better, working on things like my hip rotation, which was pretty terrible, you know, versus just trying to, you know, roll on a foam roller, say. I'd actually look at how can I move better, which is translated into less injuries. Because I've also been looking more recently, one of the things I picked up off Dan John, and then you had him on the podcast, was Tim Anderson with his original strength. I heard Dan John talking about it maybe a few years ago on his podcast, and it intrigued me because he said he spends a whole day, you know, one of his training days is putting that into, and he sprinkles it in throughout his training. And that's been really helpful for me as well. That, and then I don't know if anyone's heard of the knees over toes guy. And then there's something else called GOTA, which is the greatest of all time athletes, which is another kind of primal movement system as well. And just trying to balance things out better has really helped. The only time I've struggled more is, and Peter knows this because I've contacted him. So once you guys had Finn on the podcast, I've been doing a mixture of kind of high tension kettlebell work and some kettlebell sport. I've done a couple of competitions, and I struggled with those. And then I saw Finn talking about the pentathlon, and I like the idea of the single bell, multi-switch, and different movements. And I just, for the fun of it, I just tried a mini pentathlon in my driveway, and he contacted me and said, hey, are you interested in maybe working together? And at the time I had no structure to my training. I was kind of doing this and that and picking up random workouts, and I like the idea of committing to a program. So it's 12 weeks. But even though I've had volume in the past, it was pre-kids. So this has been, and what it's like having Paul McElroy as a coach. It sort of blew my mind a bit. And I was like, geez, how, trying to adjust to it.
Are you training 5 days a week now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I did though is didn't realize at the time was that he had given me 5 days, but it's up to you to put the 5 days in when you need. So at the start I was doing 5 days on the trot, and I was literally just, I was barely coping.
Yeah.
So in the end, what I did was 3 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off. And that has been a massive, but the bonus to that is really actually, it's really forced me to think about what I'm eating for recovery, how I'm sleeping for recovery, because it's easy to sort of sit in the evening and kind of watch TV, or, especially when you have kids, you get a short window in the evening of kind of peace and quiet. But it's actually forced me to think about, okay, I need to get to bed at, say, 10 o'clock and make sure I get a good night's sleep. But it's had a rebound effect across, I think, my whole life, and also just a learning process in terms of figuring myself out and how I can perform as optimally as possible.
I think that's it. I mean, a lot of people say, can you train 5 days on the trot? Of course you can. There's no reason why not, if you can recover. I mean, I've actually gone down to 3 days a week because my work has gone so crazy. I'm sometimes doing 11 or 12-hour days just to kind of keep things going. Everyone's kind of coming back from COVID. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of changes within my business, and I'm having to pull crazy hours. And I turned around to Paul and I said, I'm not recovering. And so we've actually gone down to a 3 day a week training option, and it still feels really intense actually. But I mean, it's one of the reasons I sought out Chris Lowe, who we had on the podcast, is because, like you say, when you start if the goal is to get it better at the sport, then you need the requisite volume, but then you've got to have the requisite recovery to deal with the volume. And otherwise you're slowly eating into that bank account. And if you've got kids, if you've got a history of injuries, or if you've got mobility issues, that bank account gets smaller and smaller quite quickly. And then eventually you burn out or something breaks. So it's interesting. You came to similar conclusions as me. It's like, okay, now I've got to level up my recovery.
Yeah. Well, I actually I told Peter I had a bit of a light bulb moment. There's a kettlebell athlete. His name's Levi Marquardt. He's a bit of a monster. I mean, he's doing double snatch. Yeah, so he made a post. He's a very quiet chap, but he made a post and it actually really resonated. He said that it was part of his sort of 5 tips. And one of them was, when you're eating, think about what you're eating to recover from yesterday and what you're doing to perform tomorrow. And it just kind of, I always I'm extremely passionate about food and cooking, and I love to cook. And I always had it in my head, oh, geez, I eat pretty healthy. But then when I looked at it, I'm not really, because I'm, making this and that and not, but it really forced me to think about, my carb intake and how can I fuel for tomorrow. And it's actually, I feel like I've started, I'm at about the halfway mark of Finn's program. And I feel like I've more hit my stride now. There are still some days I'm pretty tired, but I feel like I've actually, it's taught me a lot, especially about the recovery.
I think what you've just said, there's still days when you're tired, but there would be anyway, regardless of whether you're doing a program or not. You're going to have days when you're tired. It just is what it is. So with what Paul was saying, the similar thing with Chris, when we had Chris Lowe on, Was I still doing at that time? That was last year, wasn't it? It was the end of last year. So at that time, I was doing a fast from Sunday night to Monday night, 24-hour fast every day, every Monday, and had been for 2 years. But then I'd got, over the last year of that, we'd got the dog, who was like 8 weeks old when we got him. Can't walk him very far, for a year, and then after that year, it was getting up to like, we're doing 10 miles a day. And I was knackered the whole time. And I was like, that's because I'm fasting on a Monday. I was like, I'm now doing 10 miles a day walking, which I never I didn't do all the time. I did a lot of walking, but not 10 miles a day. So I was like, I'm going to have to start eating on a Monday. And I did.
Yeah.
And then Paul became my coach in January, and then I started to eat more. And the whole thing of like, I like to have a beer like my missus is a teacher. So she finishes work on a Friday and we'll go to the pub and have a pint and what have you. I've started drinking less on a Friday night because I have to get up on Saturday, because I do 6 days in a row of on my program, because I've got the time to do that, and I'm managing to recover. But that's because I've changed other parts of my lifestyle to fit around it. So then on a Saturday after the session, I can do whatever I like, basically, because then I've got Sunday to recover and I'm back into Monday because I have Sundays off.
What
But
do you
it
do with
has
that time,
changed.
Peter?
I'll go for a walk with a dog for 10 miles. but no, it's funny, because even though I'm a trainer and I know all this and I do it, I used to train 5 days a week, relatively light work as well, so I could pretty much do whatever I liked. Whereas now it's a bit heavier, it's a bit more intense, so I need to be able to recover. I need to eat to be able to recover as well, so I can't eat crap. And it's amazing how you don't even have to think about it like that. You just think, I'm tired, I should probably eat more. And you don't go immediately grab a bag of crisps. You don't go and immediately get a load of donuts or something like that. You go, I'm tired, I need to eat more. And the reason why I need to eat more is because I need to be able to perform in my next bit of my program. So I'm not going to eat rubbish. You kind of, or that's how it goes in my head. That's how it works. It was like, I don't reach for rubbish because it's not going to help. It's just going to make me feel worse, and I know it does.
But there's also times when you actually, and this is from my experience recently, where I am pretty driven when it came to training. I was like, I've got to get these in, and I'm trying to get my recovery in, and I just couldn't. And that tipped me over the edge. And I turned around to Paul and I said, look, I need to reduce my volume. And I really need to. And I needed to because I'm like one of these people who quite happily push myself and overtrain quite easily. And I will get up with 3 hours sleep and train, even though, because the numbers are there, and I have to stop myself occasionally from doing that. But really, actually, what I'm doing now is I've dropped back in the weights. We're just trying to master the 216s, just get really dominant at the 216 kettlebells and stick on those weights for a while. And it feels quite like a relief, because I was pushing all those weights. And sometimes it's knowing, like you say, you can quite easily, if you don't make a judgment call, you can push into pain, you can push into injury. And sometimes you do need a therapeutic period of training. And that's what I feel like I've evolved into now after doing a year of pushing,
But I think the other thing is it's supposed to enhance your life as well, because I've noticed in the past, if I'm training too much, it's it's not that it consumes you, but you'll be tired, under recovered, grouchy, it doesn't make me a good parent or husband. And I'm just, I versus now, I feel, on the rest days, I'm resting. I do a bit of Indian club swinging. I play with my kids, and then I get back into training the next day, and I feel a lot better. For me, I think I've always seen training never as a chore, but more as a privilege. It's something that I always look forward to because it makes me feel good. And I feel like I'm taking care of myself, but it's also just a mental break as well.
I suppose you identify yourself as someone who's healthy rather than saying, "Oh, I've got to do this because this is what I think."
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I do. I mean, obviously, I'm not a perfect picture of health, but the way I look at it, I've seen people in the past and people I know say, "Oh, how do you do that every day?" And I don't know where to start, and how do I, But I think part of the problem is people tend to overthink things, and nothing's ever going to be perfect, and there's no perfect time to start. But it's like a domino effect. You have one, just do one day, go for one walk, and then the next day, and even if you just walk and aim for, it sounds arbitrary, but that 10,000 steps, I mean, that's not a huge amount of distance. Throw on a podcast, listen to this podcast. That's what I did in the winter.
Like and subscribe.
I like you, Chris.
I was rucking every day in the winter. I'd put on like a 30 to 50 pound pack and go for like a 5K walk. That's another thing I picked up off Dan. I think a lot of the training that I've done, I really like Dan John's philosophy. I read his last book, The 40 Years with a Whistle, and to me that was a fantastic read. But my days of running are pretty much over, I think, and I'm happy about that. And I mean, that's not to say that running's bad, but I'm a big fan of rucking. But as I said, to be back on what I was saying is, I think there's never a perfect time to start. And the way I look at it as well is, there's this philosophy in Japanese car manufacturing called Kaizen, which is continuous improvement. So that doesn't mean that you're searching for perfection, because I don't think perfection necessarily exists. But it's the same with what I like about the training modalities I found, like the kettlebells and the other physical culture tools, is it's a skill acquisition as well, because you learn a new skill. I mean, even training with Finn, my kettlebell technique was probably pretty shocking at the start. And it's not perfect now, but it's getting better. I can see the improvements. And to me, that's, further reinforcing to keep going the next day. Even when I'm tired and I think, geez, I've got to do 100 squats today. How am I going to manage that? And then I think, well, you know what, afterwards, it actually didn't take that long. And if I break it up through my day as I can, I'm sort of keep moving, and I feel better for it.
There's a point, you've just said a million different things there, which is great.
Yeah.
Number one, the problem with Dan John, I'm going to go now, is every time he talks, it makes perfect sense. And for me, I'm always like, I know everything he knows, because when he says it, I know that. But for some reason, you don't do it. You know what I mean? And then when he puts it into context, you're like, yeah, you just pick things up and walk around, and like, it's dead simple. And you always want to do more. And he's like, his philosophy is stop doing that and just do the things you need to do. And I love that. Do what's important and do it every day. Which gets me to the mobility thing you were talking about. So you were talking about like doing the original strength and stuff, and you do the stick mobility, don't you? And doing Indian clubs as well, which is just good for shoulders. It's kind of a meditation as well, isn't it? It's good for brain health, I suppose.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You need to get Mr. Hatcher back on, because I sent him a note and I just said, "Oh, I really enjoyed the podcast episode. It was fascinating." And he said, "Oh, well, I'm hoping, I'd like to go back because I wanted to talk about the mental aspects of aging as well. And why don't you go listen to Tim Anderson's podcast, because he was on there twice." So I listened to both episodes, which were fascinating as well. But one of the things he's been using for his mental benefits is Indian clubs.
Yeah.
And I've noticed as well, when I first started and I see someone like Paul Volkavinsky or someone who's been swinging clubs for many, many years, do it some kind of pattern or put together different patterns. And it would take me, an hour or more to learn this thing. I'd screen record it and slow it down and, what's he doing there? But I found now, I mean, the time, it's the same as you doing your Rubik's Cube. The time to completion is as shortened as you improve those neural connections. I've always, like, my dad spends hours doing Sudoku puzzles. And I think, it's to your benefit to do that kind of stuff. As you get older, it's just fun, but also just keeps the brain ticking.
Well, we were talking about this because a lot of people leave out. So one question was going to be, since you started doing all the mobility, so you said you were like training to break yourself, and you achieved that, and then you started realizing it was more about mobility and stuff. So what's happened to you? So obviously your mobility has got better. So what's happened strength-wise and stuff like that as a result of that, do you think?
Oh, I think it's improved, definitely. I mean, because my range of motion is so much better, but it's also safer as well. If you looked at me when I was doing CrossFit and in an overhead position, it was shocking. Same with, at the time, the coach would put in lunges, and I would always say, oh, I can't do a lunge because my knee, I have a meniscus tear in my knee, and when I was a kid, I got hit by a motorbike, and it pretty much destroyed my leg. And I always said to myself, oh, I can't do a lunge. And then after a while of practicing with a lot of the mobility drills, and I now can lunge perfectly fine. And I've got, the stick mobility has been one of the biggest game changers for me. And it was actually someone else on Instagram who suggested it. And I ordered these things, and I was like, geez, did I just, was that a massive, expensive white elephant,
Just paid for a stick.
Yeah. But what's the benefit of them? I mean, you can use a dowel rod or a piece of PVC pipe. The benefit to those is you can put tension into them and they bend.
Yeah.
So it massively improves your strength at end range. Because, I mean, I've done yoga in the past and I've seen sort of some benefit to that. But the stick mobility is, honestly, I can't say enough good things about it. And what's also really great about it is they have every week they do free classes on YouTube that are about 45 minutes. And there's a mobility section and kind of a strength building section as well. But yeah, those have been really helpful, and also just a nice way to recover. So like today on my recovery day, I'll probably spend, half an hour doing some stick mobility.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I use like a broom handle. I just bought some broom handles from my home base when it was there. And the thing about that is, though, so I used to have family in British Columbia, in Vancouver, and would have an 8-hour flight back. So this is how not doing mobility or being tight, this is how it can show up, right? And this is how it relates to strength. So I was doing just some stick windmills, so like basically like legs at 45 degrees, and then just like, kind of rotating round, and you don't bend over, you move from the hips with it, and the stick's behind your shoulders. And it's a big, thick broom handle, and it snapped. Right, this was when I got home off an 8-hour flight from Canada, after 2 weeks off as well. So, and it snapped. Now, if I got this thing and tried to snap it, it was thick. That's not going to happen. But the amount of tension that got put through it just from that movement, and the amount of tension that was in my shoulders, actually snapped the thing. So if tightness in your body can do that, imagine what you can do if you can harness that and control it. You know what I mean?
You should speak to Iron Tamer.
Yeah, no, exactly.
You can put a chain around your chest.
No, but this is the thing, like if you gave that to someone and said, snap this, they'd be like, what? I mean, like Iron Tamer will go, okay, like bang, there you go. But a normal person, but like I found that amazing, because I was like, I couldn't do that if you asked me to, but my body can do that because it was so tight just from one flight. Because I've been sitting in the same position the whole time, and my shoulders were so rounded and stuff like that. So, yeah. And also what Chris was just saying about like the Rubik cube, like I do things with, I've got one here. I do the Rubik cube and what have you. But I was saying to him the other day, because he's thinking about getting into that as well, just to take up a bit more of his time. But train journeys and stuff, I just do it on that. Or if I'm, if you're sitting in a doctor's waiting room or an optician's or a dentist's or whatever, I'll just get it out and flicker about that, because most people will get, whenever you're going to get your phone out and look at your phone, just get that out instead. And it works your brain, it works your dexterity on your fingers, it gets your problem solving going. Same with like the Sudoku we were talking about. I do lots of those as well. I like the killer ones because I'm a bit mad. But and Chris said that with the Indian clubs as well, which is what I was going to get, which is where this is going. Is so you've got like 2 kids, a busy job, your wife's got a busy job, and you've got a lot of time taken up. So, and you said earlier, on the days when you can't like do part of your program, or you're too tired to lift stuff, you'll still go and pick your Indian clubs up and go outside and swing them around for 10 minutes or so, and then play with the kids. And you've also done videos where you're teaching the kids how to use them as well. So it's kind of a positive influence as well. So how does that, how do they respond to that? Do they see you doing this stuff and kind of like, I want to be like Dad, or do they think you're a nutter, or what?
No, they have done. In fact, though, last year, it was funny. I didn't post it anywhere, but I went outside one day and my son has this plastic baseball bat, and he found, you know, those old fashioned ankle weights that you can Velcro around your ankles and people used to do. He found two of these. I don't know where he found them. I think my wife had them, and put them on each end of this baseball bat, and had his back on a bench and was actually bench pressing these two. It was I was literally just blown away. I mean, part of me was kind of chuckling because it was kind of a funny sight, but both my kids, you know, when I was growing up, you know, my parents weren't, I mean, they've always been active, you know, I mean, but in more traditional ways, like playing golf, or, you know, my mum goes to the gym and does stuff, or my dad swims, but not super hardcore training or anything. And the same with a lot of other things, like, you know, but my parents never really pushed us into, they just kind of set an example by, like, my dad reads, you know, and I've picked that up from him, not because I just saw him sitting in a chair reading for many hours. And the same with a lot of these things. And that's sort of similarly how I've tried to bring my own kids up, is just setting an example. You know, they see me, I never sort of force them to do anything, but I suggest, you know, we go out and play games, or they just see me doing things. And then, I mean, there are some days when they're like, oh, Dad, I don't really want to go do that. But a lot of the time they'll just, you know, even my daughters come out, you know, I saw her was it last week? She had 2 dumbbells, she was doing thrusters, and she said, is this right? And I was, you know, and I don't, you know, it's just learning by example. And the same with a lot of other aspects. And I think that's how, you know, massively beneficial for kids as well. But I think it has a knock-on effect for the next generation, for them learning that, you know, movement can be fun, and it's, you know, it's good for your health as well. So,
well, often it's there's a narrative about exercise, isn't there? There is that it is going to be hard, that it is going to be a sacrifice, and that it will prevent you from doing things you love. But it's actually just a different form of reward. And kids, you know, they see movement as joy, don't they? We were talking about it with Tim Anderson, talking about the living room being a parkour course. You know, it's just, if there's an opportunity to move, then they'll find it. And we kind of do the opposite as adults, don't we? We're told not to move. We're told to sit still. We're told not to disturb anything. We're told that be careful, do this. And there's that quote, isn't there? That a caged bird thinks flying is a sickness. You kind of don't realize that we have this quite amazing machine that's kind of parked in a garage, really. You know, doing nothing.
I think some of the things you said, oh, sorry, I was just going to say, Chris, I think some of the things you said really resonate with me, and I'm sure many of the people that I train and the members and things, whereby certainly where you were talking about doing your training daily actually makes you a better, you know, person, or a better father, or you know, a more productive employee, and happier, and all those kind of things. And I think once people like yourself, you've actually exercise and movement and training to some description has actually become a daily part of your life, you know, and for the rest of us as well. And I think when you become the kind of character and the person whereby you associate yourself as, I'm the kind of character, I'm the person, I do exercise every day, and I know how good it makes me feel. Because I know whenever I go away on holiday or trips or anything with Steph and the kids, one of the first things I look for is that, you know, where the local gym is, or if there's a gym in the hotel, or if we're going somewhere fairly local, I might take a kettlebell in the car and just say in the morning, right, I'm just going to go around to the field for half an hour and do some mace and do some kettlebells and things like that. And I think that's so important, isn't it? A lot of people, they like Paul said, they view exercise as something painful or something uncomfortable or something that's going to take up their whole life. But like we've all said today, 20 minutes or half an hour at the start of the day of swinging Indian clubs or swinging a kettlebell or going out for a walk or a ruck or something like that, it enhances and adds to your life so much, doesn't it? And it's just, I sometimes wish that we could just download that feeling like you do in the Matrix, download that into the back of people's heads so they can experience that and know that, because that's the biggest barrier to get past, isn't it? To become that person that, I exercise every day and I love it and it makes me feel good and it actually enhances my life.
Yeah, I don't know if it's sort of where it came from, the whole idea that training or exercise is a punishment. And I don't know if it's something to do with a lot of people exercising because they want to lose weight. And so maybe it's sort of, I've gone to excess on this side, so I need to punish myself on this side, which is a very sad. I mean, that's one of the things that I think, Josh Hillis, his book is fantastic. The whole psychology of, emotional eating, and there's certain aspects that people just don't think about. But I think the other thing is my philosophy has also changed in that I used to go to the gym or do my training in one block, and then I just sit around the rest of the day and, recovery, or sit at my desk. Versus now, of course, I have a program and I have to do that training, but it's also just not even, just go for a walk or just moving throughout the day. Versus, obviously I have to work to get done. But at the same time, just taking regular breaks, just to, do some stretches or do some stick mobility or go for a 10-minute walk or go outside with the kids. Just do something, because I think it's massively beneficial. It's like my kids have been at home since March, and I made a decision to get my son outside before school every morning to play football, just in the street. We just kick a ball up and down. And I noticed in him, his mood was a lot better from, versus just staring at a screen all day. It's been a massive thing. And I think that's where it's moved to, versus just, just moving for the enjoyment of it, but seeing it as something that, is not a punishment. It's just, obviously I think there's an aspect where, and this is something I've talked to my kids about a lot, is, sometimes things aren't easy, and it's good to embrace that in some aspect, because I think there is that reward at the end that you will, there's a sense of achievement. Like one of my, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, finish, please.
Yeah, no, like my daughter is massively into drawing, and she keeps coming to me and saying, "Oh, Dad, how I just can't do this as good as you," because and I said, "Well, I've been drawing for 40 years, and it's just putting in the hours and doing that. Things that you're enjoying are not going to come easily. If you enjoy it, you'll enjoy the process as well." And and that's something I've always wanted to teach my kids, was that, the same with exercise or things that are hard. You have to put in the time, and even if I look at, say, Finn, and I think, geez, his technique, and like I see that he's cleaning a 40-kilo bell for 6 minutes, but then you look at, Peter and our Indian clubs coach, Zach, he just, his technique is absolutely impeccable. But then I look, he just spent 18 hours swinging Indian clubs on the weekends as a challenge to himself. Well, he's put in that time and he's seeing the benefits from that. But to me, that's inspiring. I don't look at that as, oh, I'm never going to be that good. I just think, well, then I've got to put in the work myself.
Things in life aren't binary, are they? They're not like a 0 or 1. And
exactly.
When we look at our Outlook calendar or Gmail calendar, whatever, we just have these compartments of time and allotted time. And, our watch is divided into 12 hours and our year is divided into days and months and weeks, and everything is compartmentalized. And so when it comes to our fitness, we say, I've got an hour here and I've got an hour there. And really, actually, and I think that's what I try and instill in my clients, which is our classes are a catalyst. They're a catalyst for better behavior outside, more active behavior outside. Not better, because that's a moral judgment, and more active behavior, whatever capacity that is, whether it's a holiday or anything like that. And then just finding joy in movement and finding excuses to just be more active. Otherwise, like you say, people just start shrinking and just saying, I've done my workout and now I'm going to sit at the desk. And really, how many calories do you burn in a workout? Not that many, really. But you're just finding excuse after excuse to just explore, and it's that exploration which I think is really the reward.
I was going to
Yeah,
say, Chris, so
absolutely.
do you train largely on your own, don't you? From what I see in your videos.
I do, yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
quite
I mean,
that you can just
it's,
grab your kettlebells, grab your clubs, just go out to the driveway and, and do 15, 20 minutes. It's so you're not kind of beholden to anyone else's schedule, are you? Or you're not meeting
no.
someone to train at a particular time. So that's really good.
I mean, I do miss the community aspect of the gym, and often, I don't do the classes there anymore, but I just was using it as an open gym because they have open gym times during the day. And I did miss that, obviously during COVID, I missed because I have a lot of friends there, and it's nice to train alongside people, even if you're not doing a workout together. So that's the only thing. I mean, I find that's the benefit. If I had to train inside my house all the time, it would be a lot more difficult. But the fact that I can be outside in the fresh air, to me, I really enjoy that. And I find it, I'm always motivated. I'm like, okay, well, I've finished this meeting. I've got, a bit of time now. I'm going to go start my training, and then I'll come back in,
So do you split your workouts out across the day? So for example, if you were given like 5 exercises to do, if you're pushed for time on a particular day, you'll just split that in half or something like that?
Yeah, that's one of the things I talked to Peter about, because that's where there are 2 days on the program where there's a lot more volume with the squats and presses and other stuff. And it was taking me a while, and I was struggling to get it all in. Right. On the days when it's more technique, the sport specific stuff, where I've got certain time blocks with certain RPMs of, say, snatch or clean and press, I'll do that all in one go, and that's fine. But the longer days, I actually, like the other day, I did swings and presses, and then started my day, and then at lunchtime I grabbed half an hour and did some squats and finished it off that way. But to me, that was also,
your body doesn't set in one place in between.
Exactly. Yeah. No, but I keep moving, and to me, I found mentally as well, it helped to kind of chunk it. If I mean, obviously not everyone's doing a specific program or getting programming from a coach. Although I will say, I have to say, I never thought I always did my own programming, and a lot of it was based on Dan John's philosophy of, push, pull, hinge, squat, loaded carry. And that served me fairly well, but I always noticed I was never really getting that much stronger. And I didn't have any defined goals. But talking to Finn kind of made me reevaluate that. And just, I think, having a coach to guide you and not necessarily hold you accountable, but it certainly takes a lot of the guesswork out of what might take longer if I was doing it on my own. And the fact that you guys have coaches actually, as coaches, made me also see the benefit of that as well. Because, not everybody knows everything, but I think, that was a bit of a light switch moment for me as well, especially talking to Peter, because when I heard he had Paul as a coach, and working with Finn has been really good so far. He's awesome.
So there's a reason behind this question, but what do your neighbours think when they're looking out the window? They got this mad bloke outside chucking bells around and maces and stuff.
I know. It's funny actually, because my next door neighbor's selling his house. Nothing to do with me, honest. And he's been having some showings, and this older couple turned up yesterday.
Can you just not be there?
Bringing a mace and a hammer.
No, I find most people are curious actually. They refer to, they see me swinging the Persian meals, and they call it my obdeja. They don't even notice me now, to be honest.
You're the eccentric Englishman.
Pretty much. Well, I always used to say, because in here it gets, in the summer, it can go up to 40 degrees. I mean, it's really hot. And I'd be outside at lunchtime, and I would always say, only mad dogs and Englishmen are out in the noonday sun training. But it was, no, they don't even notice me now. The most, I think there's a book running on how soon I'm going to wipe out my mantelpiece.
Yeah.
People keep saying, I can't wait to see you destroy everything on your mantelpiece.
Who was it? There was somebody posted a video we've got an Indian clubs group in Instagram, haven't we? And someone posted a video of a guy doing flips with 2 28-kilo kettlebells. He was swinging.
Oh, that was me.
Flipping them over, catching them again, and he missed one, and it just went straight through his wooden floor, like proper structural damage.
Yeah.
That was so that's Stephen Rhino Strength on
Oh, him, yeah.
Instagram. He's extremely strong. Yeah, he had a video where he was flipping 2 heavy bells, and I think the funny bit was when he put his foot over it as if it wasn't there.
Because he looks at it,
that was
he's massive, isn't he? He's a massive. He looks at it and goes like, "Oh God, she's gonna kill me."
Well, he snatches the 68-kilo bell from what I see.
He does, yeah.
But the reason why I was asking that, Chris, by the way, is because I train people in the park, as you probably know, and I've had, like, you get the odd comment when people are walking past, and I post things like people did. So there's a lass who comes along called Bonnie, and she did like 110 snatches with a 12 kilo without stopping or something like that, right? Which is decent. And then one of our friends commented on Facebook, like, "Isn't that a bit excessive?" And it's like, well, we don't do it all the time, but she was fresh as a daisy. Then she can just do it. But this person is like judging her on her own ability, right? And then there's other people, like, you know, we've just done just to prove to them all after lockdown, because everyone only had one bell. So we did a couple of weeks of training, and then I was like, right, let's test everybody's press. See how many presses you can do with the bell that you want to. And most of the guys used a 24, and they were doing, like, you know, between 15 and 20 presses, which is a lot. And one of the guys was on there doing it, and somebody again commented saying, like, "You look like you're in pain." And it's like, no, that's effort. It's not. He's not in pain. If he was in pain, he wouldn't be able to do it. It's effort. And then there was one particular comment. There was a lady who's quite new, and she's actually a wife of one of the guys who comes along. And she started out with a 10 kilo bell, pressing it above her head, and she thought it was heavy. Got her technique better. She's now using a 12. She pressed a 16 the other day. She's only 2 months in, but she was using a 12 on her right side, fine, left side, bit of a struggle. And she just finished a set, put the bell down, and I said, "Okay, it's still slightly too heavy." And this woman was walking past. She went, "Of course it is. It's way too heavy." And I was like, I just kind of looked at her as if to say, like, what do you know? And I wanted to tell her where to go, but obviously I'm quite polite, so I didn't. But in my head, like, no, honestly, and I was like, there's that little seed of doubt, like, am I doing this wrong or something? I'm like, you know what I mean? But then I'm like, actually, no, she's judging it based on her perception of what it is, and it looks like too heavy. And I'm like, it's not too heavy because she can get it up above her head. But what we've acknowledged is she needs to take a little step back and then make that look easier. So that was why I was asking, like, if you get any comments from neighbors and stuff like that, of, like, you know, because you just look like you're doing. It could look excessive if you're out there all the time, and like, they've got problems down there, like, obviously because he's outside all the time. You know what I mean? And it's not. It's just
no. You know what? Most people are extremely positive about it. Actually, I mean, some of them are like, "Wow, that looks like a lot of weight," but no, everyone is actually. I mean, the first few times I was somewhat self-conscious, and then I just got on with it because I'm like, I can't go to the gym. I've got to do something, so I'm outside on the driveway. And everyone has been super supportive of it, to be honest. But I think that's a shame. I mean, I've watched actually the progression of some of your guys on Instagram, and it's super impressive the weight they're pressing now. But I don't. It's a bit sad that people put their own preconceived limitations onto others, or think that, oh, that's too heavy, and whereas really, I mean, they could be doing it themselves. It's you know, and I'm not sure that one of my biggest if I was like world leader, I would immediately get rid of those 8-pound plastic kettlebells, because I just think they're ridiculous. But the thing is, I see it with some of these sort of trainers with thousands of followers, and they're doing a kettlebell workout with this tiny little bell, which I think is a shame, because, you know, not that you have to be lifting a 24 kilo, but I mean, I think everyone's capable of doing more than they think they can.
But this is one of the things, isn't it? If you can, why shouldn't you? So the guys can do that, you know. And it's like, do they need to be able to do that? Well, not really. Is it better to be able to do that and have more? Like Finn talked about this. If you think being strong is like too. What did he say? I can't remember. Anyway, he was like, try being weak.
If you think lifting weights is dangerous, try being weak.
Try being weak. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, do you need to be able to do that? No. However, is it beneficial to have more strength than you need? Because when you do need it, you need that extra 10% on the strength that you use every day, and you haven't got that 10%, you're screwed. But if you've got 50% more or 20% or 30% or whatever more, you'll access that 10% no problem. And then it's like, well, okay. So the other stuff you never really need, but if you enjoy the process, that's fine. And you just become a more useful person, don't you?
It's like the Brett Jones last week when he was talking about having a buffer zone, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In terms of, having this sort of buffer zone that, if you are strong and you're up here, you've got that much to play with rather than, if you do come across a physical problem or Brett was talking about his illness last year, if he's that strong when he then goes into a period of illness, he's got that whole buffer zone before he becomes an average person, and he's that much more resilient and that much more strong to deal with whatever life throws at him. So yeah, no, it's really interesting.
Yeah. I think it's also a mindset thing as well, because it's self-reinforcing. If you work on your physical fitness and your strength, and I think it's self-reinforcing in terms of, similar to what you said about whatever life throws at you, you feel like you can overcome it. Because I mean, Paul mentioned, like, and Peter said, you've got 2 kids, you've got a busy job, and you're doing this. And of course, like anyone else, there's some days when I'm like, what am I doing to myself? But to be honest, the fact that I can do these things, it's, as I said, I think it's a mindset where you start it and you keep going and you think, I can achieve it. I can do this and it kind of trickles throughout your whole life, to be honest.
Yeah. It's so easy for people to, or for anyone to, or even us, to make excuses or to, one of the great things Mark Rifkin said, I think when we had him on a few weeks ago, when he said, motivation is for amateurs and discipline is for professionals, and he said, don't ever ask yourself if you feel like training, because there's going to be most days you won't feel like training, and just get on with it, and do it. And I think that, I think yourself, totally exemplify that, which is brilliant.
Excellent. I think this is going to be a good place to wrap up, because we've been going for a fair while, haven't we? Chris has got a job to go to.
Yeah, I do. I have to say, I was a little bit interested in Steve Maxwell's comment about his training philosophy around kettlebells, and talking about, which I found interesting, because I do wonder if there's a bit of sort of correlation versus causation in terms of people who have had multiple surgeries and whatnot. I'm not convinced it's from the kettlebells, but it's from other things they've been doing before that. Because I don't know him very well, but if you look at someone like Pavel, I don't know how old he is, but he's not a young chap. But his training, from what I've seen, at least based on all the books he's released, has been fairly holistic. And to me, that's been massively, anyway, it was just something I was thinking about since I heard that podcast. And it was,
that was a controversial. We didn't start this podcast to be controversial, but that was a controversial episode. It's had a lot of, it's had like 2,500 views on YouTube, I think, and then a load of listens, like download as well for people just listening. And we actually addressed that a little bit with Brett last week as well, because Steve made some comments about Brett which weren't true, about the surgeries he's had and stuff like that, which weren't true. And it's one of those things. He said what he said, and when we get people on here, they say what they say. Their views aren't necessarily our views, but everyone's got their opinion, and they're entitled to it, right? That's kind of the way it goes.
But I think it was good. I think it was good.
But it's true though, But the thing with that is there was a lot of what do you call it? Feedback about it, shall we say? A lot of people agree with him, and a lot of people don't. And it is one of those things, and we spoke about this because we did a podcast, just the three of us, and we're going to do that. We're going to do that every month, just to talk about some of the contradictions that come up between what different guests say. And it's because they've all got different kind of avenues into where they are, So like Brett, hurt himself doing certain things. Dan Johns was a college athlete, so he hurt himself. Mark Rifkin hurt himself doing gymnastics when he was very young. So from what Steve was saying, is like, are you going to listen to someone who's had a knee replacement or who's had a joint replaced? Are you going to listen to them? And it's like, well, Mark Rifkind, yes, you're going to listen to him because he knows what he's talking about. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things. We don't necessarily have to agree with what he said, but it doesn't mean he doesn't know what he's talking about either.
I actually saw it as beneficial in a way because it was really thought-provoking. And I thought you guys doing that episode where you kind of did a recap and discussed, I thought was a fantastic idea, especially if there's, other listeners who, I mean, I don't know if I'm not super, if they're not even less knowledgeable than I am and they're like, oh, geez, he said, don't lift kettlebells, or, I think to me, it kind of brings it all together. Which is really good because I thought that was a good episode. But no, I think it's thought provoking, to be honest.
I've always thought about any scientific studies or anything like that. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts recently, and about this sort of stuff and about like neurology and stuff like that, and about how they talk about how these studies are performed, like studies on weight loss and things like that, and they say, oh, we've taken out all of the other variables, but you can never do that. So there's not necessarily a concrete answer to everything, so in Steve's head, kettlebells kind of mean you're going to need a hip replacement, but I don't think that's true. I don't think any of us think that's true, but
especially as maybe he's one of the first generations that kind of had them as they had made their kind of comeback.
Yeah,
and really, a lot of the guys and women who kind of took hold of that new wave of kettlebells back in the early 2000s were already kind of past their 20s. They're in their 30s, 40s already, and therefore probably had a bit of mileage anyway. And it probably attracted to them because they were doing heavy barbell lifts and things like that. And this idea of just like, hey, maybe I can get my fitness done with just a 24 kilo or 16 kilo kettlebell. I kind of, because I know that feeling sometimes when you're lifting, I say heavy for me, weights, you're sometimes a bit like, God, I would like to lift something light. And so you come in a bit beaten up, and then 10 years later, some of those injuries just start, there is already a cascade of effects.
Oh, I think the efficiency of the kettlebell is incredible. But actually, a number of years ago, I talked to my wife about what equipment, I was going to get some equipment for home. And we talked about getting a barbell, and I'm absolutely so glad that I never did. Because
I was about to say, did she buy into all the equipment that you did? Did you give her the list? Was it like 50, like a small book?
It's small. It's been acquired over time. Let's put it this way.
It's always been there. It's always been there. I bought it 2 years ago.
Have you ever bought something and kind of tried to slip it in between everything else?
I've always had a 32 kilo kettlebell.
It's been there. Yeah, no, you just never noticed it. But no, I find, like, for me, the space aspect, but also what you can do with a kettlebell versus a barbell, I would say, especially if your mobility and other, is limited, a kettlebell's fantastic. So.
Excellent. Well, I think we should leave it there because James has got to go. He's got.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Fantastic.
Everyone's got work to do except me. I'm going to take the dog for you.
Yes.
Chris, it's been great having you on, mate, and it's been good to actually chat to you as well because we've had a bit.
Yes, I know, in person,
Instagram and what have you. But yeah, it's been actually nice to hear you. You haven't got. Well, what is funny is when you talk. So me and Chris did an Indian club certification together. Online with Zach, and when Chris talks to Zach, he's got a Canadian accent, and when he talks to us, he's got a British accent. My brother-in-law used to do that. My brother-in-law is an Englishman in Canada, and he does exactly the same thing.
A bit like Christian Bale, he's like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can be the next Batman after Robert, whatever his name is, Pattinson. That'd be good. Anyway. We're going to wrap it up there. So, James, anything to add?
No, nothing to add. Just to say thank you to Chris. It's great to finally get to meet you and have a proper conversation and find out a bit about your history. And I look forward to following you further. And if people do want to kind of get in touch with you or find you or see some of the things you're up to, what's the best avenue or the best media platform for people to find you?
I mostly stay on Instagram. I do use Facebook a little bit, but no, I find Instagram's good. I tend to use that for a lot of my training logs and everything else. So, but no, I just wanted to say thank you very much for having me on, and it's been great to meet you guys in person finally, and Paul as well, who I hadn't had any contact with in the past. And no, that's been hugely enjoyable. So thank you.
Cool.
Excellent.
So it's at Master Denning with a double N, isn't it?
That's the one.
Yeah, at Master Denning with a double N. Cool. Excellent.
Paul, anything to add?
I think we need to create a new section of the show called "If I Ruled the World."
Oh yeah, that would be a long list. I don't know if you could get through that.
I mean, it's an interesting first law, which is to remove plastic kettlebells under 8 pounds. But I mean, there was always world peace. But I mean, I get,
no. That it's, when you're setting a goal, remember the goals that when you're setting a goal, start out small, and then we'll get to world peace. Like
that's the one.
It's the butterfly effect, isn't it? We start with 8 pound kettlebells, and before you know it, we're solving starvation, all those things. But anyway, no, it's great talking to you because you've kind of been on a similar journey to a lot of us, actually. Just kind of like
that's right.
Just kind of jumping through these kind of trails of thinking, and you suddenly go, "Oh, that's interesting," and it kind of eventually all starts to join up. But it's quite fun to do that, and I'm sure there's plenty of hobbies that are exactly like that, and people just get into them, and they're just like, "Wow, okay, wow, what's over there? What's over there?" And it is a challenge when you start getting really interested in to try and bring it together into something that actually makes sense, because you can end up just doing one thing one day, one thing the other day, and you could just be a jack of all trades. But so it's interesting to see how you've evolved into a little bit more focus, and now you've got that kind of direction with your own program, but you're still keeping that kind of open mind, which is great.
Excellent.
Yeah,
right.
definitely.
Well, thank you for listening. Please remember to leave us a review on iTunes. You can't leave a review. I don't know if there's anywhere else you can leave reviews. Possibly Google as well. I think we're even on Amazon as well. So yeah, review wherever you listen. Please like and share this. If you've got any friends, family members, anyone who you think this podcast will help out, then just share it with them, or just share it in general.
Give it for Christmas.
Give it to them for Christmas. Yeah, that'd be great. We've also got the Facebook group as well, which Chris is a member of. He's in there. And you never know, if you interact enough in the Facebook group, you might end up on the podcast like Chris has done. So imagine that. We might even do a competition, a giveaway, become a guest on the podcast. Will anyone want to win that? I don't know. So
everyone goes silent.
Yeah. Like, hang on. Nah, nothing. So so thanks for listening. And next week it's just the three of us talking about stuff.
When's Franz? Is Franz Snyderman the week after? Is he the week after? I'm not sure.
No, he's the week after. Next week's the three of us, and then Franz. Is it Franz or Franz?
I say Franz, you say Franz.
Franz Ferdinand wouldn't be such a good name for a band, would it?
Yeah, but it's how Americans say it, isn't it? And it's like the thing of you say potato, nobody says potato. But anyway, we're all done. Thanks for listening. We appreciate you all. See you on the next one.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com, or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Oddity.